In the United States, I noticed that I don't know if you saw this. Walmart is now offering over $110,000 to attract as a salary to attract new truck drivers. And what strikes me about this issue, and I'd love your thoughts, is, and this is also related to the trains, is there's not a shortage of truck drivers. There's a shortage of how much people are willing to pay truck drivers to do the hard work of moving our goods. And I think that's what you're seeing. Walmart's very well respected as a place to work as a truck driver, right? It's not your indie kind of freewheeling kind of lifestyle, but it's very well respected. They got one of the largest fleets in North America. So to me, and I looked at the CN stoppage and, hey, listen.
The CP stoppage, yeah.
CP stoppage. And I looked at the compensation that the senior executives got, like 140% increases year over year. And they're going after their workers. I think there's a renaissance here of the people, of the workers, and their recognition. Maybe this is long overdue, but certainly brought to the foreground by COVID. You need these people, and they need to earn a living, and they need to, anyway.
You know what? This is you bring up a very good point. In some economic sectors, you're starting to see employees earn more than managers. IT. So I have a friend of mine actually who's a manager in an IT business. He's now making offers to future employees, offering a salary higher than his own salary, because it's easier to find managers now than people doing the actual work on
driving
the
the
floor.
trains,
driving the
trucks.
trains, and so this is, and it got me thinking. Wow, this is interesting. Are we going to see that in the food industry? I don't know, but there's lots of talks. As you know, we talked about this before about robotics and automation. But you know what? I'm watching this scenario very closely, because perhaps at some point we could see clerks and different positions earn more than they earn now, but could they potentially earn even more than managers? Because finding managers is now perhaps potentially arguably easier than finding people doing hard work, low pay, long hours.
And you know why it's easier, notwithstanding that, is because you can now find a manager who works in their office. That could be their home office, and they could be anywhere. Right. Well, you can't just be money. Anywhere when you drive a train.
They don't have to dress up. They don't have to spend money on haircuts, and so it's actually cheaper to be a manager. Yeah. But if you're actually facing customers, if you're actually at a cashier, if you're moving product inventory, you got to dress up. You got to show up to work. You got to take the train, the bus, the car, whatever. So
and your addressable market, so to speak, is much smaller, right? You need someone in that city, whereas if you're hiring a manager, they can be in any city in the world practically with the new technology in the post-COVID era.
So the balance is, why do we pay managers more? Responsibilities, risks, right? We make decisions. Managers make decisions, and decisions will come with some responsibilities, and managers will take on risks. What I'm starting to see perhaps is the manual tasks may actually be valued more than ever, perhaps even more so than seeing people making decisions that are taking risks. That's the interesting balance here.
Well, it's too early to call the return of the middle class, because that's been a facet of the modern economy, is the decline of the middle class.
What is the middle class really? I'm still looking for it. Is it under my desk? Where's the middle class?
Yeah, well, I'll take you back to 1950 when we had a flourishing middle class, and that was an interesting time in post-war.
I got to tell you, being in Florida, when people pay no income tax, there's no discussion about a middle class, to be honest.
Interesting. All right. Yeah. Let me one little quick last thing, and then we'll get to our interview with Carl. Speaking of costs, inflation numbers coming out of the U.S. maybe portending what it's going to be here. 8.8%.
8.8%
inflation numbers, just since biggest number since the early 80s. Do you think that has some? What are your thoughts? You think that's going to resound or rebound into Canada as well?
Well, no, next week. I'm particularly concerned, obviously, because we tend to catch up to Americans. Let's face it. Consumers are noticing. They're noticing different things, like lobster at $20 a pound. Did you see that?
Incredible.
20
Incredible.
bucks a pound. I actually had a chat with the Lobster Council of Canada earlier this week about this. And that's when you see sometimes some marketing agencies in Canada have little thought about the domestic market and brand image. When you actually are selling lobster at 20 bucks a pound, you're going to spook a lot of people, and people
Yeah.
may actually be moving away from the product. And so because of
Mm,
course their focus is China, Asia.
yeah.
That's where the money is. But now they're being hit by a sixth wave, so you got to rely on other markets. And so
Yeah, Shanghai, right? Completely locked down, running out of food. I mean, the zero tolerance policy in China is something to watch
it's
because
something to watch. Yeah, absolutely. And Shanghai is not. Yeah,
it's the biggest city in
I
China.
don't know if you've been to Shanghai, but I've been to Shanghai a couple of times. And it's not necessarily China. I mean,
Mm,
it's North America and China, really. And because when you go to Beijing and mainland, that's when you really feel
mm.
China. But still, putting Shanghai on the lockdown is quite a lot. I mean, it's 25, 30 million people in Shanghai.
Yeah,
That's
and it's shutting. It's for a different podcast, but it's shutting down manufacturing. I mean, it
I
is
know,
yet
I
another
know.
complication of the food
So,
supply
so,
chain.
but I do believe that what's going on in Canada with prices is going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get
back
people
to
to
that.
think differently. Next week, or not next week, but in 2 weeks from now, we're releasing a new report on gardening, and
Hmm.
on April 26th and on April 28th, we're actually releasing. Get this, a animal uh, protein base. We're looking at whether or not plant based products are cheaper than
Oh,
meat products, given price changes that we saw of late.
interesting,
So
interesting.
we're comparing essentially animal protein with analogs. So we're excluding tofu. We're not looking at dairy yet. We're just looking at bacon, chicken, pork, beef, and analogs, and see pound per pound which is cheaper right now. Yeah.
Interesting. That's super interesting. We've been talking about that over the series of the podcast. We've had some trying stuff episodes and some guests. Zogolos. I think about them as
Yeah.
a delicious
Yeah.
product. We've always commented the
Oh
product's quite
yeah.
good. So it's not a matter of sacrifice, that's for sure. So
So
that's
so
super
we're
interesting.
we're working with
End of the
Better
month.
Cart Analytics with
Mm.
Melanie Morrison, CEO, and she's been on our podcast before. They can capture like 2 million data points in an hour.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
it's
Wow. Wow.
just so we're able to do this now. We're able to look at all prices across the country and compare different food categories.
Wow. So
Yeah.
impressive.